Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. This will be the first of a couple of videos here for today. So what I just wanted to do first off was to kind of separate your assignments from the actual content we're going to be learning here today. So let's get right into it. So you have made it to unit number last. So what we'll be covering these next couple weeks here are primarily going to be gait and running analysis, and then functional activities and functional kinesiology with sports analysis here. So kind of the tentative plan is that the first, well, this week, so today, which is the 27th of April and the 29th of April, we'll be covering primarily gait and running analysis. On next Monday, which is, I believe, the 4th. So May 4th, we'll be covering the functional activities section here. I'll do somewhat of like a systemic review for your exam on Wednesday the 6th. And your second exam is going to be everything from Unit 4 on. So you have the lower extremities, so that's hip, pelvis, knee, foot, and ankle, spine and posture, and then gait, running analysis, functional activities. I will tell you just immediately that the majority of the content is going to come from units 4, 5, and 6. So the majority of your exam content will be from that, but I'll talk about that here a little bit in a minute. So several things you have to do this week. I would really appreciate if you completed the student opinion of teaching, definitely because we had to switch to going online midway through the semester. So this is really important that you guys fill this out just because it gives us a good idea of how we're doing, specifically how I'm doing. And this is the chance to tell me if you love me or hate me or just think I'm okay. For your exam, this is going to be taken online now. So I know it originally was going to be in person, but it's going to be online now. I will not post this, or I will not open this until after class time on Wednesday the 6th. So you won't have access to this until then. You're going to have 50 total questions. They're going to all be multiple choice. I think I actually might have like one or two true and false in there, but still same thing. And 150 points total, so that means 3 points a question, 15% of your total grade. You're going to have 2 hours to do it, which is more than enough time. Just from my experience with giving these kinds of exams, students typically take about an hour at most. But either way, I'm giving you 2 hours. I'm also going to give you multiple attempts at it just because, like I said, we've had such a, the semester has been very piecemealed together. So I don't want to be giving you an exam where you just have one chance at it. And if you happen to mess up, that's it. Your grade for the semester is ruined, especially because, again, this is worth 15% of your grade. So I am giving you multiple attempts at it. Now I have it set so you have to retake the whole exam. It's not like you take it one time and then you only have to retake the things you missed. So you have to retake the whole thing. And I will have, actually, I'm going to set it so the answers shuffle so you can't just get out that way. So why don't we do that real quick here? And this is going to be due, so your last access to it is going to be May 10th. And just to give you a reminder that this is actually going to be on Central Time. So all of your due dates, and it's not so important with the actual assignments, but with the exam, it absolutely is. This is due 11:59 p.m. Central Time, meaning it's due at 9:59 p.m. Arizona time. Oh, so we are 2 hours behind Kansas City, and we take all of our Canvas due dates and they are synchronized with Park's local time zone, or Parkville's local time zone. So keep that in mind. this is going to be due on Sunday, May 10th by 9:59 p.m. If you start this exam, for example, let's say you started the exam at 9 p.m. Arizona time on Sunday the 10th, you then only get 1 hour to complete it. So once it hits 9:59, or actually once it hits 10 p.m. on May 10th Arizona time, the exam locks and it's over. You cannot access it again. If you're midway through the exam, it shuts you out and you can't reopen it. So this is it. This is all you get. So again, this is going to be open May 6th. So that's that Wednesday. So next Wednesday it'll be open, and you'll have until Sunday night the 10th to get it done. If you by chance have computer problems, if something screws up for you where you answered 5 questions and then your system froze or whatever, that's another reason why I'm giving you the multiple attempts, because then if that happens, you still have plenty of time, hopefully, to retake it. So that'll be that. Okay, now getting into the stuff you have to turn in. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things due over these next 2 weeks. So first off, you have your discussion question. So you have to pick one of these. So just pick one of the 2 to comment on. And the first one is comparing gait of someone that's walking versus someone that's running. I'm sorry, you're comparing the gait of somebody that's running with shoes, somebody that's running without shoes. There you go. And what are the major differences there and why? We're going to cover this a lot more, I believe, on Wednesday, but we'll still get into that. And then this next one here, compare the overhead throwing motion of a baseball pitcher to a football quarterback. How are these the same? How are these different? And then how would your approach to evaluating these mechanics change? So we're going to go over functional sports and functional anatomy next week. One of the best tools, if you choose to pick this question, one of the best things I would suggest for you to do is to also look on YouTube for videos, especially slow motion videos, of football quarterbacks throwing and baseball pitchers throwing. And we are separating baseball from softball here specifically because it's overhead throwing. Now, granted, in softball, if you take, say, a position player, they are throwing overhead, but the mechanics between a softball throwing motion versus a baseball throwing motion are still a little bit too different to give a good mechanical similarity to there. So you have those 2. Remember again that your initial post should just be on that one topic. So you pick one topic and then you have to respond to somebody else with a substantial post. Remember, substantial post says why you agree with somebody or why their points are interesting, not just that you do. So you can't just restate what they said. You can't just say you agree. And even though I don't have it in here, you really can't write a substantial post with only one sentence. It really hasn't happened in this class so much, but I have been seeing in several of my classes that I'll get a follow-up response of one sentence, and that is not substantial enough. So, at least make it a couple sentences. You don't have to be doing a lot of citations for it. Still, you should be including where you got your source material. It doesn't have to be APA formatted, but you should include where you got your source material if you're using outside sources. So that is your discussion for the week. Now, your assignments here. You have 2 assignments, one on gait, one on functional tasks. So the first one here, and I will just pull this up real quick. Oh, here we go. Okay. So first off, your assignment for gait is you have 6 total questions. First one here is on your actual gait pattern. So when a runner shows more of a heel strike, mid-foot strike, or a forefoot strike with their running, what is actually going to happen? And then how does pronation and supination play into this? And then how could these results impact their risk of injury and long-term joint health. During running, wider ranges of motions at the joints increase or decrease compared to walking. Um, that should be pretty intuitive there. Why do you increase range of motion when you are running versus when you're walking? But again, we'll cover that here as we go through gait. This here, number 3, make sure you pay attention to the differences between number 3 and the differences between number 6. With number 3, it says, during running, are the lower extremity muscles working eccentrically, concentrically, or both, and why? This means that you have to tell me the lower extremities, so your leg muscles, only your leg muscles, and only the ones that we've covered in class. So if we didn't cover it in class, like your very small, like intrinsic foot muscles or things like that, you don't have to list them. So think of just the big muscles. Are they working eccentrically, concentrically, or both, and why? Well, you have to tell me when they're working eccentrically, when they're working concentrically. You can't be both eccentric and concentric at the same time. So that doesn't work. You can't have those same thing at the exact same time. But if we look at the gait cycle, which will make sense as we cover that, you want to tell me when they're working eccentrically, when they're working concentrically, because they will both do that at some point during the gait cycle. For number 6, you have to name the gait phases. So there are 7 phases we're going to talk about here, and list the major muscles that are active in each. The way I would set this up would be, if you're doing this, I would go to Insert, Table, and click a 2x7, actually 2x8 table, and I would say gait phase, muscles active, or I guess we could probably say active muscles. And then you would name what this actual phase is called, and you would put, whatever muscles you have for that. One of the big things that you'll see with the PowerPoint versus with this is that the PowerPoint lists 8 gait phases, but there's only 7 we count. The very first one, which again, we will cover in the actual video on gait, the very first part of the gait cycle is essentially like a getting ready kind of phase. Don't use that. So I will point this out again when we get to the actual content for this, but just kind of keep that in mind. Again, I would put a 2x8 table to fill this out, where you have one side being the gait phase, the other side being your muscles. Now, this here, this is a little bit kind of, we can't do this. So this was planned for when we were actually going to be in class, because we're going to do this. So number 4, you should not do. And it's because, again, this was something we were going to be doing in class for your lab. So do not do this. And again, this is only for our current Spring 2 2020 term for FW-225. So make sure you are not doing number 4, because we can't do that. And then number 5 here is just asking you to research runner's knee. You want to describe what it is. So just tell me what it is, and then what are the muscles associated with it and how to prevent this injury. So there is your first homework there. So that is homework for gait. For your gait and running lab, this here, you're not going to be able to do any of the group members and the averages. So don't worry about doing that. What you're just going to need is, you're going to need a tape measure and probably a timer as well. I'm going to go through all of these steps with you. So you're going to have to do all these, which I'll definitely explain as we get into it, but you'll have to be able to do step length, your stride length, your stride width, your cadence, and your walking speed. And I will go over how to do exactly all of those. For the lab itself, so granted, there's not an in-person lab per se. What you want to do here is you want to do one of two things. Well, I guess technically one of three things. You can either video yourself doing these different conditions. So you have three different conditions you have to do. Run normally, run a little bit faster, and then run barefoot. So you can video yourself and then analyze yourself. You don't have to turn in the video of it or anything, but what you should say is where you got your information, meaning video of myself, used YouTube video at www dots and then whatever the URL is. Used video from site, and again, listing the site. So for the running condition, if you're using the same one for all three, that's fine, but just make sure you tell me where you got the actual person or the running that you're analyzing. And then for the analysis, you're just going to tell me what you see in each of these here. So in each scenario, you just tell me what's going on with this person. For example, let's say we're doing a relatively slow-ish running speed. Where is my head positioned at during the run? How big is my arm swing? And you want to use these to compare against each other, meaning my arm swing is less at a normal running speed than it is at a higher running speed, that kind of thing. So you just have that to do. So pretty straightforward there. For your second assignment, again, I've had one little modification here, but with this is your functional tasks assignment. First part, you're just going to name the muscles of the hip, knee, and ankle that act as agonist, antagonist, and stabilizers when ascending and descending the stairs. Be sure to include the type of contraction during the different phases of the task. So again, what I would do is I would go to a table and I would do really probably just even a 5x3 table. So you're going to have going upstairs, going downstairs, and you're going to have agonist, antagonist, and stabilizer. And actually, sorry, I'm just going to add one more here. And you want hip, knee, foot and ankle. Okay. So yeah, I maybe screwed up just a little bit, but do a 6x4 table. There we go. Instead of a 5x3, 6x4. Your titles up here. So going up the stairs, going down the stairs. what your agonist is, what your antagonist is, stabilizer, and muscle contraction type. Actually, sorry, let me do one more thing here. All right, one last time. Let's have a 7x4. There we go. So now you just be filling in the muscles that are working for each of these. All right, and then this here, are you able to walk up the stairs with one completely extended knee? This means one knee is locked in place. And then what would you need to do to compensate for this? One of the easiest ways to think about this is how are my limbs affected if I were on crutches? That's what you would want to think of. For this, the desk part, you don't have to do part 3 because you're not going to be doing that section here. So don't do number 3. Number 4, research the standing desks and how do the motion and strength requirements of standing desks differ from sitting desks. And this means how do motion and strength requirements of your person, like of yourself, differ. And then would you ever recommend a standing desk to a client or patient? So you're going to tell me, if I use a standing desk, is it going to require extra range of motion and extra strength requirements? Tell me what those would be versus a seated desk. And then if you would ever recommend a standing desk to a client. And you probably should tell me why. For the sports analysis, you pick one of the below. So granted, when you look at this on the actual site, so if you click on this from here, you're actually going to be getting the unedited view. So just remember, you are to pick one of either 5 or 6. Only do one of them. Do not do number 3, okay? But you have a baseball pitch and a soccer kick. You have to tell me these 4 things about the one you choose. Range of motion needed to perform the task at each joint. This only means the major joints, meaning for the baseball pitch, I want you only to talk about really the glenohumeral joint, the humeral-ulnar joint, and then probably the acetabular femoral joint, the knee, so the knee proper, and then your ankle. For the soccer kick, I want to see the hip, the knee, and the ankle. So this here, shoulder, elbow, hip. Movement and plane of motion at each joint. So how much movement do you need, or what kind of movement is occurring? Does that mean it's flexion, extension, abduction? Go through that. Muscles that are acting as agonist, antagonist, and stabilizers at each joint, and the type of muscle contraction. So is that concentric or eccentric? And what may happen if any of the major muscles are weak or are not functioning or contracting correctly. So same thing for each of those, but remember, just pick one of them. So there is your Unit 8 homework. And then for your Unit 8 lab, again, with this, you're not going to be able to do multiple people because we don't have one. If you want to get like friends or family members to do this with you, by all means, go for it. But you don't have to do that. All right. There are really just 4 things you have to do. You have to walk up the stairs, and then you have to measure range of motion in your right leg and your left leg, knee range of motion, right leg, left leg, ankle range of motion, right leg, left leg. So you are measuring the hip, and you want to, again, make sure you do both legs. So if I'm walking up the stairs, you're going to have whatever leg you step forward with, that will be one leg. Whatever leg stays back, that'll be the other leg. So you just have to really do one step with this. That's perfectly fine. If you don't have stairs, use a chair, use a step, use some books. You want to get at least 12 inches. So that's at least a 12-inch step. If you're not precisely right on, so if you measure your steps and for whatever reason they're like 10 inches, don't worry about it. But you want to have, if you're picking or if you're having to like say stack like books on top of each other or something like that, you want to make sure you're doing at least 12 inches. So you're going to do this for walking up the stairs, for walking down the stairs. And again, you only have to take a single step. Then you have to do a sitting or desk assessment. Now, for this one, what you should do is get someone that to measure yourself. So you would want to have somebody actually with you that you can measure. If that's not possible, then what you can do is, again, get a picture of someone who is sitting, and you would want to then provide measurements of that person or of that picture. So if you can only find, like, say, or if you don't have any access to other people that are willing to do this for you, get a picture from the internet, include that picture here, and then you would want to tell me what the hip flexion angle is, knee flexion ankle, elbow, and then distance from the popliteal region to your seat. We'll go over that as well. And then height in inches, meaning how high are you while you are sitting. So the height would be like how high the actual chair seat is. So from the ground to where the seat actually is. And then for here, what you're going to do is you are going to assess the range of motion needs at the shoulder, elbow, and wrist when you're doing these different things here. So you can, simulate the stuff. You don't actually have to do it yourself, but you need to be able to say where each of these joints are and the range of motion you would need to be able to do this. So if you have any questions on any of that, please let me know. Hopefully I've made this clear enough for you so you're able to get a good idea of what you need to do. I'll be following this up again with another video on our actual content, and then I will see you all a little bit later.